Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good night, depending on when you're watching this lovely presentation. Alright, so today we are going to be talking about linear equations. Whoop whoop! More specifically, we're going to be talking about some common misconceptions. Now on the worksheet given, you are given a place to list these 4 common misconceptions, so please feel free to pause the video and go ahead and write down these 4 things before I talk about them. Alright, so now that you have them written down, you can even jot some notes on the side if you want to. We're going to be talking about common misconceptions that 8th graders make when dealing with linear equations. So the first one we're going to talk about is the negative sign. You know, when we throw a random negative sign in there, my high school teacher used to call it a flashing yellow light, meaning you need to slow down and just yield a little bit and pay attention to what you're doing. The second thing we'll be talking about is moving from one side of the equation to the other. Because, you know, subtraction, addition, those are kind of difficult things. And third, we're going to be talking about distributing terms. So, you know, when you have a beautiful pair of parentheses, you have something on the outside that you need to distribute into the middle. That's what we'll be talking about. And then fourth, we'll be talking about combining like terms. So when we have, you know, a cookie and a cookie, maybe plus some other like fruits, we got to add the cookies together and leave the fruits to themselves because, you know, apples are not oranges. Alright, so let's get started. Negative signs. I'm sure you can tell which one's the negative sign. So I'm going to give you some examples of some students' work. So they were given a problem like this one, and then they were asked to solve it. Now these are real student examples, so I want you to look closely and see what they did wrong with the negative signs anywhere in the equation. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit, show you their steps, step by step. And then I want you to take a minute and pause the video and really think about, okay, what did they do? How did they misinterpret that? So go ahead and pause the video. Alright, so the second problem that we're going to talk about is this one, and like looking at a different kind of negative sign and seeing, okay, what did this person do wrong? Alright, so go ahead and take a good look at it, see what they did wrong. We'll talk about these later, so don't worry if you don't know or if you're freaking out about how to explain it. We'll talk about it. Alright, so moving from one side of the equation to the other. And they lie about the cookies, just saying. Alright, so we have this beautiful problem. We just have to move some things over and divide, right? Alright, so, well, let's see what this student did. We got that. They don't know where to go from here. They don't have an answer. Alright, we'll work on that. And then the second problem is just like this. So go ahead and pause the video again. Look at the second one. It has a lot of stuff going on, so I want you to make sure you know what's going wrong. Alright, the next thing we're going to be talking about is distributing terms. You like my picture? It's cute. I know. Look at that eye. Beautiful eye. In this case, it's not square root of -1, but that's okay. Alright, so look at this beautiful equation. Looks familiar, doesn't it? Alright, well, let's see what this student did. Good, good. Alright, they got an answer. Take a minute and pause the video if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next one. So go ahead, study that one for a minute, maybe 30 seconds, whatever you need to see what they did wrong. Alright, now combining like terms. I want you to take just a minute and appreciate this beautiful comment. Alright, now on to this beautiful problem. Alright, look at this. See what they did. Look at both problems. You go ahead and pause the video if you need to. Look at what could have gone wrong, how they solved these problems. And next we're going to be talking about re-teaching. Because, you know, we're great teachers and all, and we can be like the best teacher teaching the students everything they need to learn, and they're taking it in, they're learning new ways to do things, and there's always going to be something that goes wrong because of past perspectives that students are bringing into the classroom. And so we really have to look at it and see, okay, how can we address the old problems a new way for them to learn how to deal with them. So first, we're going to be talking about negative signs. Alright, so looking at these beautiful problems that these kids did. Alright, so now is where I want you to really pause the video, and under the reteaching part in the worksheet, I want you to write out an explanation of how you would reteach these two problems on the left here and how they went wrong, and on the right here. And I want you to think about, okay, how could you reteach these to get across what you actually want them to learn? So go ahead and pause the video, take a minute, think about it, brainstorm some ideas, and write them down for me, please. Alright, so I'm going to tell you guys how I think I would solve it using this nifty little pen tool that I found. Like, seriously, look at that. So cool. Alright, so for this first equation over here, this one right here. So, if you didn't notice already, the mistake that this student made is when they took this negative sign, they just made this entire thing a negative 4x. And you know, that is definitely not what we're trying to do here. If you look on this right side of the equation, you realize that she did distribute this 3 over to both of the components in this parenthesis. So I don't think that distributing is their problem here. I think that really it's this negative sign out front that is messing them up. So the thing that I would do to then change that, I would have them even rewrite this problem and have them rewrite this negative 1 times x plus 4. So that they really understand that this is a negative 1 out front and not just like a negative sign to turn into negative 4x. So that way it actually shows them that they are distributing this negative sign to both of these components. Now on the right side, what ends up happening is this negative sign right here completely disappears when she's down here. Or he, she, I'm sorry. I keep saying she. I really don't know the gender of the student. That is my fault. So what you're looking at here is all of a sudden they subtract this 6 over beautifully, get 7, but then this negative sign disappears right here. So what I would personally reteach is the fact that, okay, maybe even stick some parentheses around this negative 7 to realize that the negative has to stay with the 7. I would even go as far as to say, okay, rewrite this kind of problem as 6 plus a negative 7x. That way they can even see farther when they do subtract this 6 over. They still have this negative 6 or negative 7x in the parentheses. And then they'll get the negative 7x equals 7, and then they'll get the right answer of x equals negative 1 when they divide. And you might have come up with different ideas, and that is wonderful. I'm probably going to ask you to share those if you came up with different ones in class when we do our activity. Alright, so on to the next. We have moving sides of the equation. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video after I get all this up. And go ahead and look at these. See, write down some ideas of what you think you would do to reteach. Alright, so looking at this first problem, I definitely see that, you know, they just completely forgot about this beautiful equal sign right here. So what I would do is I would make them treat this equal sign as more of a wall, like such a barrier, and even maybe have them write that this is 1a over here. So they see that there's a barrier between them. So then what they'll have to do is subtract this 19a over because of this barrier and not just be able to multiply. So for this second equation, if you didn't see what they did wrong, is they took this 2/3 and they multiplied by 3/2, just like you're supposed to. But what they did is they only multiplied by 3/2 for this component and for the negative 8. They completely forgot about this negative 4/2. So what I would do in this case is I would always tell them to deal with this constant first. Just get it out of the way onto the other side so you can deal with the x after. Just ignore anything that's in front of this x because if it was a constant in front of there, like in front of the x for the coefficient, you wouldn't try to divide by that. You would get rid of this constant first and then divide. So what I would say to my students is always just start with the constants if you have an x and a constant equaling a constant, and therefore they can then add this 4/2 over and have the 2/3 x equaling, -3/2. So then they can continue working with the problem because they did beautifully other than that, working with the problem and getting to the right answer. All right, so on to distributing terms. We have these beautiful problems. Let's go ahead and pause the video and write down some ideas like we have been doing. I'm going to go ahead and talk about what I would do. So as we see here, they had the negative sign, no problem. Like they distributed the negative to the x and to the 4 beautifully, but what they had problems with was this 3 on the other side of the equal sign. So they had this 3, they multiplied by the 8, but they completely forgot the 2. So what I would have them do is I would always have them draw these lines. I would reteach them to just draw in those lines to make sure you're multiplying by both, and then be able to recheck and go back, okay, 3 times 8, I did that, that's 24. And then they would have to look, and 3 times 2x, oh, I only wrote down 2x, it's supposed to be 6x, and then they would solve their problems. So now looking at this second equation, as you can see, I definitely messed up in copying this over. This is not supposed to be there. I think I did that in the first one too, so I am so sorry if that messed you up. Alright, so if you go from the first one to the second one, go ahead and pause the video, write down what you would reteach in this circumstance. Alright, so what I would do is what it looks like they're doing is x plus 2. They're only multiplying that 4 by the 2, and they're forgetting about the x. So again, what I would do is either I would make them draw these lines again, make them realize that it's 4 and x, that you can do that from the back instead of the front, or I would have them realize that multiplication is commutative. Is that the word I want? Yes. Alright, so then you can write it as 4 times x plus 2, and it's going to give you the exact same answer as x plus 2 quantity times 4. That way they'll get that whole distribution thing of 4 times x and 4 times 2, and then they can see that, solve from there like they did. And that would work beautifully. Alright, so for combining like terms, we have these beautiful problems. Look at all the beautiful problems. So beautiful. Alright, so what happened here is they have this 8x minus 2 plus or minus 3x, but they took it and they were like, oh, 8x, 3x makes 11. It completely makes sense to me, but I understand that it's not right because of this beautiful negative sign. So what I would do in this case is I would have it be 8x, and I would just tell them to reorder all of the terms and obviously keep the signs with them. So it'd be 8x minus 3x minus 2, and that'll help them see that it's really 8 minus 3, not 8 plus 3. So then for this second one, I would look at it, okay, so they did x plus 9 plus 3x. What did they do? Well, they added the 9 and the 3, completely forgot that this is a 3x instead of just a 3. So I would, do the simplest things as to see if this would work and have them just underline the ones that are all like the variable. Or you could do it the constant too and make sure they underline the constant, or they underline the variable, circle the constants so that they know what they're dealing with and what they're trying to combine to get it equal to the other. And if you had any different ideas for any or all of these methods, that is wonderful. You're a teacher, well, future teacher, and that is what is supposed to happen. You're supposed to have so many different ideas, and this just shows that collaboration would be great too. So in our activity, we'll talk more about these, more different approaches that you can do to fixing problems. And teaching really is a work of art. You have to put in the effort to be able to think about ways to reteach different things. So that's all I have for you today, and I hope you learned something new.